What's up, everybody? It's Hardy Construction. You can find us at hardyconstruction.tumblr.com, youtube.com/hardyconstruction, as well as facebook.com/the Hardy Construction with your host, Compan.
Mississippi Butt Wipe.
And today's episode of a television show, of a series, is...
Channel Zero, Candle Cove.
Channel Zero, Candle Cove 2016 is a series, an anthology series called Channel Zero on the Syfy network. This particular show is about an anthology series telling the stories of creepypastas, internet short-form horror stories, including Candle Cove and the No End House.
That's not what it's about at all. That's just a description.
I know, somebody just described the whole show. I'm trying to read off IMDb. What can I do? So this show stars characters played by Paul Schneider, and I don't know anybody else who's playing. You saw who, right?
The Aunt Petunia from Harry Potter, who's also in the Mario Brothers movie.
So the reason why I wanted to pick this show is because I actually saw it last year. It's only a 6-episode series. It's an anthology series from Syfy, and I had heard good things about it. And I was like, Syfy channel? Even though I watched this science fiction show on it called The Expanse, you can see there's always like limitations with the budget. But I gave this show a shot since it was only 6 episodes, and I was actually pleasantly surprised at the kind of series that it is, and the fact that it's smartly taking ideas that people have written already and then adapting it for film. Creepypasta.
So I always hear about creepypasta, but I've never, I don't know what it is.
Creepypasta. Okay, so creepypasta online is essentially the equivalent is a creepy sort of campfire story. You know, when you're telling a scary story to people, and basically you're writing it down in short form. You give like short little stories if you want them, but then there tends to be stories that are written in, you know, parts and stuff like that. But it's essentially...
Is it like collaborative, like writing prompts or something?
What they do, creepypasta, the word actually comes from, I don't know if it was invented for Reddit, but it's on the Reddit website. I don't visit Reddit myself that much. I know you had Reddit.
I had it, and I deleted it because I got tired of the...
But there's plenty of creepypasta. If you want to give a listen to creepypasta stuff, there's a lot of podcasts where the narrators read creepypastas, or they'll read short horror stories. Sites. I'm trying to think of good creepypasta podcasts, but there's these are just essentially just short stories that are horror form, and they're told in first person or third person. There's always creepy twists and stuff like that, and you can find a bunch of them.
Creepypasta.
And the show Channel Zero was created by Nick Antosca, and it was funny by watching this, and it's only 6 episodes. I was pretty much thinking this was better than American Horror Story in its current
so far, I would agree. Because
this show is only 6 episodes. It kind of gets to the story on point. But American Horror Story is like about 12 episodes, 12 to 13 episodes.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is Ryan Murphy, the creator of comedy horror, according to himself, is throwing millions of storylines at once. And
that guy has like serious ADD. Like, I don't understand.
And don't get me wrong. Like, I don't think American Horror Story is a complete waste. There are actually 2 or 3 seasons that I thought are great, but I think it's pretty faltering in how its content is put out there nowadays. This season in particular, I'm not really liking that much. But this show is sticking to one storyline, and it's not trying to fill in 20 or so episodes. You know what I mean?
There's
it's like
one
very
mysterious
compact
thing going on. Like, there's like the tooth thing is the only thing that's like, where are they going with this? But we'll see.
And this is based on a short creepypasta called Candle Cove. And I actually listened to the Candle Cove podcast, or the episode, somebody reading it, after I finished the 6th episode last year. And it's so funny because they obviously take a lot of liberties with the storyline to, you know, how they adapted it for the show. Obviously, you have to flesh out characters, because the characters that appear, the only characters that appear in the actual creepypasta are the Candle Cove kids. I mean, not the actual characters, the puppets.
Well, they wrote it for, on Reddit or something.
Right.
So
Essentially, the original creepypasta for this, the Candle Cove storyline, in a nutshell, is a bunch of people sending messages to each other on a forum, saying, hey, do you remember this show about, you know, these puppets? And the other person will be like, yeah, I remember this, the Skin Walker or Skin Taker or whatever. And just people talking about it. And then the whole gag is at the end of the storyline is what's explained in episode, I believe, episode 1.
They were watching Static.
They were watching Static on TV. So that's what's supposed to be the creepy angle of it. So they fleshed it out for this series, and I think they did a pretty good job with doing that.
This is a completely random reference, but when you said the skin taker guy, you remember that skin slicer dude on Dexter? He was like the landscaper guy.
Yeah, the Latino guy.
Yeah. He was the tree. He cut the trees or whatever.
Yeah, I remember that.
And like he was just like a random serial killer that cut people's skin off or something weird.
Yeah, because he was like a weird version of another character from the actual novels.
But he was like in the middle of a season about a completely different plot, and then they just had this guy the Spanish dude that just like cuts skin.
It's a good thing the Dexter series never went to shit, right? Oh boy.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you want to listen to a good podcast that has like people reading creepypastas, listen to the No Sleep podcast. It's a very good show where they take different actors and they adapt for the audio medium. Anyway, so this show, what does this show concern, Danny?
The concern? Basically, it starts out with this guy, Mike, who is a...
Mike Painter.
Mike Painter. He's a child psychiatrist who is... Well, it starts out he's having a bad dream. Basically, his twin brother was killed when he was a kid, and he's going back to his hometown, which he hasn't been to since his mother sent him away after his brother's death.
It has very much a Silent Hill sort of vibe to this show.
It's very, very creepy, and it reminded me, actually, we reviewed this movie, I forget what it's called, The Invitation, where it's basically a bunch of friends reuniting, and then one of them, is like part of a cult or whatever. But it reminded me of that kind of vibe of like all these like under the surface like animosities towards each other. Like you could tell everybody feels really uncomfortable and they all have like this kind of anger and secrets towards each other a little bit.
I wonder how much. I hope they gave Chris Straub as the original writer of the Candle Cove storyline. It's a very short story, so I wonder if they gave him some decent cash for creating this, because obviously there would be.
I hope so.
It was decent. I'm sure the show would have done something else. I'm really excited because the new season came out. It's called No End House, and I listened to that one. Storyline for that one wasn't as good, but I heard that the show is actually really good. I saw the
commercials on the end of each episode.
And it has
the 6 rooms or whatever.
Yeah, it has John Carroll Lynch in it.
Isn't that like the plot of Toad Road, though, or something?
I don't remember what Toad Road happened.
Yeah.
I don't remember what happened.
Well, it was the thing that if you keep walking through these different gateways in the forest, eventually, like, nobody's ever made it to, like, the last gateway or something.
You are stupid. A trooper, because I have absolutely no idea what happened.
No, that movie wasn't that good, actually. That's the only one from that Elijah Wood's company that I was like,
So there's something that's compelling Mike Painter to go back to his town that he grew up in, and there was obviously a huge chaotic thing that happened where 4 kids were murdered. Mike had a twin brother, Eddie, right? Eddie was his brother,
I think.
And his brother's body was never... Eddie's brother was never found. So what's funny about it is the actors. I was listening to a podcast before I watched this called Syfy's Who Won the Week, and they were actually interviewing the actor, the guy who plays, and he was saying that he actually
plays Mike.
Yeah, he plays Mike. That the kid that plays the twin brothers is actually one actor. So.
Oh, okay.
Yes, like maybe they didn't want to pay 2 actors for that scene, but it was pretty interesting watching it after. But anyway, so 4 kids were murdered, and they assumed that Mike's brother was murdered as well. They found the bodies of the 4 kids, and they never found his brother's body, according to the town itself.
Forensics.
So when Mike comes back to town, obviously all this shit starts happening again. Candle Cove, how Candle Cove fits into the storyline is that Candle Cove is a show that all these kids would hypnotically watch on the TV, even though obviously it wasn't really it wasn't happening. It was sort of
it's a really freaky show, and the guy's mustache is awesome.
Yeah, it is, right? That's the little worm guy that's in it.
But it's basically just eyes and a mustache.
It's in a sense sort of adapting the It sort of thing where adults don't see what these kids can see in a way. So that's happening in it. And I what I really liked about this show of all is that it had this underlying sense of dread and just bizarre, unsettling feelings. Like, I guess it could be scary, because one of the first things that's creepy is that part when, he's in the interview, and the guy's talking to him, and then everybody's frozen, and then he's looking at the cameraman, and the cameraman's like a mannequin.
Oh, and he was smiling? That was creepy.
Yeah, and then he hears somebody's voice asking him, I forgot what the guy asks him, but it cuts to that thing walking down the hallway on fire, walking towards the camera. Like it was
Yeah,
just
that
like
was
out
really
of
cool.
nowhere. So that's what I liked about the show. That it's like it's just unsettling.
Do you This is another thing. This kind of reminded me of a little bit. Have you ever read The Regulators? It's the
That's a Stephen
kind of
King
like
book, right?
yeah, it's like the sister novel of Desperation. It's kind of like a bizarro version of
I
that.
have not
book.
read that. How is that?
It's really good. The villain Tack from Desperation is in that, and basically it's like a retelling of that, kind of like an alternate version where all the characters are in it, but like different characters basically.
I remember hearing that. I heard that the adaptation for television was one of the worst movies of all time.
Well, I don't know if they made The Regulators, but they made Desperation.
Oh, they heard Desperation was awful. That's what I heard.
Desperation wasn't that great, but what's it called? There's like, I don't know. There's this TV show that the kid is watching that Tack just like loves watching.
Uh-huh.
So, and he keeps watching it over and over. So Tack becomes obsessed with like fucking, westerns and stuff because of this TV show. Anyway, like it kind of reminded me of when I was watching this. I kept thinking of that book.
So what this show is doing is that it's taking the best out of basically all sort of horror tropes, like the mystery trope, the it sort of trope where these kids are dealing with these creatures, but it's seen through. This is like, imagine if this is the second half of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, not the second half, but the adult
The
parts
adult
of that
half,
book.
yeah.
Where he's confronting something from his past. Obviously, something compelled him to come back. It scratched. It made him slash the word "Mike, come home" on his arm, which got him locked up into a psych ward. And immediately his wife like filed for divorce, I guess, because like his wife was saying you can't talk to the kid and shit. And because I remember watching the show and I was like,
very supportive.
yeah, I completely forgot about I knew that he wasn't having a relationship with his wife, but I didn't realize he had cut his arm while she was there. Like I completely forgot about that. And I was like, wow, she just really dumped his ass. Like she dumps him. She's like not with him.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
I could understand if you have a child and like that put the fear of God into you about protecting your kid, but obviously but whatever. That's people turn on a dime. So what can you do about that? They deal with her later on in the show, so I mean, you get to see the relationship between those two.
But don't say anything.
And his
Don't
daughter.
say anything.
No, I'm
I've
not.
seen the first two episodes.
So I mean, this is a show that you will continue watching, right? Like,
I'm gonna finish
it out.
the season.
That's what I like.
The season. I don't know if I'll watch the
new season
room house or whatever, but
I'll let you know if that's
this.
any good, because I think I'm a pretty good judge on these type of shows. But what I like is that there's a mystery that is to be solved. Obviously, I don't want to spoil what happens in this season, because there's a flashback to a character who's killed with a hook in his chest, and that leads you to think that maybe Mike is not innocent, and maybe something compelled him to do something back then.
Well, I think that don't tell me, because I've only seen the 2 episodes, but my theory is that all of the kids, all the people at that table at the dinner reunion, are all killed their siblings or killed the other kids or whatever. Like I don't think that like anybody was not killed by a child.
You think the four kids that were killed earlier were killed by those people that are adults now and they were their relatives?
They were killed by other children that watched the show.
That's what happens in, I think, the first episode or the second episode, when that little girl, his friend,
Katie stabs her brother Dane or whatever the fuck,
because he has a relationship.
The sheriff's kids.
The sheriff's wife was somebody that they obviously all went to school with each other when they were younger, and they survived this chaos that happened. But Mike was the only one that his mother basically sent him out. She was like, don't come, get out of town, because his father disappeared. And then suddenly his brother vanished with those 4 other kids. So, and
why would they all stay in this town? I guess it makes you stay.
Yeah, because obviously when you go through something like that, you don't want to stay around. But I guess everybody else did, because they weren't so caught up with it, even though they all had some form of recognition of this Candle Cove show, but they all think this is like pirate television. They always thought it was just pirate TV, because it's funny because it's a pirate.
Well, nobody ever told them that they hallucinated it all, or not hallucinated it, but like.
And I think it's a really, the art design of the show is pretty good. Like the puppets look like cool sort of indie hipster puppets, but not cheap looking. Maybe the little boy looks cheap, but I like the skeleton one. You know how he looks, and then that was the one thing that stuck.
Yo, I would fucking run if I saw those things.
Because there's a great scene when Mike's walking around. He's having a flashback as a kid running through the house, and he sees a giant version of the skeleton puppet, and it's just standing there, and he's like, "What the fuck is that?" So, and you see throughout the show, you actually see real life versions of each puppet on the show.
And now I'm like so confused. Like, with the tooth thing. Like, what are they going with that? I
Yeah,
guess
that gets
maybe
explained. The explanation.
It does? Okay.
The explanation for that is a little bit wonky, but it does make sense in the long
And
run.
then
I guess
Mrs. Booth, his old English teacher, is like fucking feeding it teeth at the end of the episode I saw.
Yeah, that'll be explained. It's all explained towards the end. This is why the show is very much like a version of Silent Hill. And if anybody's familiar with Silent Hill, it's about this. It's a lot of it is psychological, basically being sucked into your own psychological hell. Not saying that nothing of this isn't happening. It's all in his head, because it is happening. And his interactions with other people, obviously with the sheriff who is not trusting of him. That's why I like that angle, that this guy comes blowing into town and all of a sudden all this bad shit is happening.
But he was summoned by the TV show.
The same thing, the stuff that had happened in 89 or 88, 89, when they were kids. 88, when they were kids, and now it's happening again this year.
The summer of 88.
The sheriff's daughter disappears. All of a sudden she wants to, she stabs her brother with a hook, just like, the other kids had gotten murdered, I guess, back then. So I like that, that whole idea of casting doubt on the lead character. So, when you see
I like the idea that Mrs. Booth, you're going to find out at the end, like, she'll just be, like, sitting there, like, dressed in a pirate costume, like, laughing insanely or something.
But I like, and then I also like when the mother starts investigating as well, and she's like, she goes to that cable access show, that cable access area, and that
and that dude is like fucking nuts.
He shows her a fan fiction version. He does a cheap version of his own show of Candle Cove. I mean, really, the thing that sticks out about the show is that it feels adult. It doesn't feel like it's going for cheap shocks. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it doesn't feel cheap. The show is not cheap at all. It feels like there's care put into an adaptation of essentially a one-page story. You know what I mean?
It really does feel a lot like a better version of American Horror Story.
Yeah, it's a good anthology series because it's short. You know what I mean? That's the thing with television shows now. You notice nowadays that seasons tend to be only 12 episodes long.
Yeah, or and 10 even, which I'm fine with.
And that's what happens with shows. When shows are that long, they have to form storylines with characters, that many episodes, and then have to have some sort of weird switch in the middle of it so you can keep, interest in the show going. Like, you can't stay with one storyline for one whole season. That's sort of a thing that happens with, like, Jessica Jones, where they're fighting one bad guy throughout the whole season. You're like, it's 12 episodes. You can get rid of this shit in 5 episodes, That's why, like, people are going nuts about Game of Thrones, which, like, was 7 episodes.
Honestly, I think that could have used 10 episodes.
Yeah, I think so too. That's the thing, because you win or you lose depending on the kind of story you're trying to tell. Like Game of Thrones in 7 episodes.
Game of Thrones, like, I'm rewatching it now. I'm not no spoilers, but I'm rewatching it, and like the first couple seasons, there'll be a conversation that takes up 10 minutes,
right?
Where it's just like, you're seeing, this person's like a real asshole.
That's the thing, because they had a wealth of material to deal with, but now that they've passed George R.R. Martin, who's
now they're like, let's cram everything into 1 minute.
Because I think what happened is George R.R. Martin told them how the book ends, so they're just kind of going to that route.
I wish they would slow it down, but I guess they're not going to. Either way, I'm happy. But yeah, no spoilers.
No spoilers for that. And anyway, so that's why I think it works with this show. That's only 6 episodes. That's what I deal with, and it makes me interested in the new season, obviously, because a lot of care went into it, and I think the acting across the board is really well done. It doesn't feel like it's edgy or it's trying to spook you in a shitty, cheap way. Like, it does have the sort of jump scare element where, like, a weird sound will come out and you just see stuff, but it's not, like, lame. I don't think nothing about the show to me rings lame.
Yeah, it doesn't seem lame at all.
And it feels all real within its own universe. So, I mean, this show has a lot of stuff going for it. It has killer kids, psychological trauma. It has an adult guy trying to figure out the mystery, and they're not giving us the full answer,
it looks like they're reusing some of the actors in the second season, because...
Oh, are they? Okay.
Well, that kid, I'm looking at the IMDb, and some of these people are in, like, 11 episodes, 7 episodes, which means they must be in the second season, I guess.
I'll let you know when I see it, but I think that I think it works as a show, and the fact that I think that it makes you want to continue watching after the first 2 episodes means that it's doing its job. Yeah. I mean, you know what the vibe of the show is now. Like, the way that the show plays out is exactly how the rest of the show is
I'm definitely going to finish it. I'm going to finish it in like the next day or two. We should finish. Yeah.
I think we'll cover we'll do a whole like synopsis of the whole series. But I think as a show for itself, I think it's a really well done unknown sort of gem that's on, basic or pay cable. You know what I mean? It's a show that's worth it on. Because it's hard to find. It's not hard to find really good shows, but when you find a good show that nobody else really talks about, that's when you're like, okay, tell people about this show, especially a horror show. Yeah. There's only American Horror Story, really. There's no other real horror show.
And there's no commitment. Like, usually with a show like American Horror Story, it's like, I don't want to watch like 80 episodes of like that amount to like 4 plot lines tied up and the rest just like hanging there.
Was there anything about the show that you thought wasn't really interesting or didn't work for you?
No, it's only 2 episodes and I love it. Like, I have no complaints.
Yeah, I think it's a really good show. Originally, we were supposed to do Shin Godzilla, but then I watched the 2-hour version. It was very political, that movie. Although I do think people should watch it because there's like chaos.
I'm gonna watch it, but I guess we're not gonna review it.
But maybe we will when I finish it. I'll see how it is. But I think it's a good show. I think for a 6-episode series, please give it a look. It's on syfy.com. You can if you pay.
The Syfy website. I watched it on that.
So you can watch it on that. I mean, there's plenty of other shows that are out there, but this one I think is one that has quality to it, and it's done really well. And for taking a show adapting short stories that you get the spine of a good horror story, and then you can build something around it. I think that's pretty fucking incredible.
I hope that guy that wrote it got some
Chris
credit,
Straub, right? Yeah, he did. He got his name all over the show. So
good.
So I bet you he's writing 900 other fucking short stories and be like, please adapt this. Give me $10. He's doing that walking around. But Nick Antosca obviously is the smarter guy here, saying, you know what? How about I just take this story that some guy made for free online, adapting it, give him a couple bucks, and we'll
that's
have the
like
residuals.
Every movie based on a book ever.
Yeah, but this is even better because it's like a short story that you just get the goods. Because like with short stories, you have what the plot is within one page.
Well, short stories are really hard to write because you have to tell a whole story and with no development.
And they're usually full of shitty twists at the end. You know what I mean? So this one actually, this was just an idea that grew into something bigger as a show. So I like it, and I give this show.
Well, we're doing the first 2 episodes, not the show.
The first 2 episodes so far. I've seen the show, right? So, these first 2 episodes, I would give it an 8 out of 10. Trying to comfort a child on a hospital bed when her dad thinks you're pulling pederific style attacks on them.
Pederific. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 for these first 2 episodes.
Excellent.
Slicing your son's hand with a knife after he tells you that he killed your other son.
That's the one thing I'll say about the first episode is that when I saw it, I knew I was going to completely keep watching it because at the end of the first episode, these kids are watching the Candle Cove series, and these puppets have these weird way of talking, right? And he's like, you got to go into the cave. And they just show the cave. And then you see this like superimposed sort of 80s skull over itself.
Yeah, with the eyes inside it.
And it's like a completely silent scene. Well, it's not a silent scene, but you hear weird ambient noise happening in the background. And it's just like mesmerizing because of how fucking creepy it is.
Yo, I wish I had a TV show like that when I was growing
yeah, right. Imagine you just start stabbing people.
Well, you know what? We had Pee Wee Herman, so
yeah,
there
that's
you go.
true. And he was teaching us to masturbate. With that, Danny, what's the final word?
Pederific.
The horror deconstruction.